Okay, welcome, friends, to a very special treat today. I'm really glad that you are listening in to the Prayer Focus podcast. We've been journeying with many different leaders and having great conversation about beloved identity, about sonship, about becoming mothers and fathers to our generation and the assignments that God gave us. And today we have a really special treat to invite you into this conversation. Like I've said many times throughout our conversations together, is this really is a conversation, and we're trying to invite you into a conversation, and we want you to eavesdrop into conversations, and we want to dialogue with you. We want to hear your thoughts and concerns and the things that God is teaching you, the revelation that God is releasing to you as we are journeying together. So today I have a good friend and a CEO partner by the name of Devin Burke. He out of LA, Southern California area. And I want to introduce you to my friend, and we want to talk a little bit about some things that probably aren't talked about a whole lot. We talk about successes, we talk about best practices, but what we sometimes fail to talk about is some of the disappointments and how the Lord gives us next steps and gives us confidence and hope for the future. So today we're going to kind of just have an open public dialogue about some things that as the Lord begins to shift and redirect us, how do we keep our hearts alive and full of hope and prophetic insight into what God's doing? So I want to introduce you to my friend, Devin Burke. Devin, tell us just a little bit about where you do, or where you're at, what you do, and some of the things that give us just a brief history of who is Devin Burke. Where do you find your hands busy right now?
Okay. Who is Devin Burke? You'd have to ask my wife, but according to her, my last recollection is I'm a good-looking old guy. She has said that recently, so that gives me hope. But I have my wife, and I have a what's called a freight forwarding business, international logistics. We handle imports mostly, but exports too, ocean freight, air freight, customs clearance, trucking, logistics. And I've been doing it for 40 years. We've owned our company for 25 years, gone through a lot of valleys and mountains. I met Scott at the, what was it called again? The Rise something over
That's
Eagle
right.
Mountain.
Yep.
Is that where you used to go to church, Scott?
Yeah,
Is
I
that
was on.
why you were?
Yep,
Yeah.
I was on staff there for several years. Yeah, it was an awesome journey, awesome season.
And what was the pastor's name again? He's got a great name.
Yeah, Bobby Hobby is his name.
Hobby. What a cool name. Anyways, so that was, I believe, in March of 2022. And we had just experienced 2 years of explosive increase in our business due to the pandemic, because the logistics business, that was the perfect business to be in, because it was so hard to get stuff shipped everywhere for a myriad of reasons. And so everybody's making money hand over foot. But so I spoke at that event for 15, 20 minutes or whatever. I remember I did go over my scheduled time. And I gave kind of a testimony of how I had gone through 5 years of trial in business, and how the Lord had been speaking to me and telling me to do certain things to prepare for blah, blah, blah. And then I had this tremendous increase. So it was like, I guess this is the Lord telling, giving me an opportunity to give a testimony of success. But there was one guy that spoke at that event who gave his testimony of how he's going through about a year and a half of failure. And it was such a raw and honest thing. And I was like, wow, that's unusual. Usually you hear testimonies about how you've been through the valley and you got all this, God just came through, and, you got all this success. And so I remember thinking, wow, that's the real testimony, when you talk about how you're still hanging in there with the Lord during the worst of it. So then I hooked up with Scott and Michelle, and we had them partner with us for intercession, which is really uh, a great idea. I mean, like, we'd always needed that. and we've always prayed for our business and maybe asked our friends to pray, but nothing on a consistent level that Scott and Michelle offered. So we started to get really good prophetic words. When I say good, I mean they were spot on, but they weren't what we wanted to hear. And so I kind of got my wish. I started seeing a decline in our business right after that. And I was like, and then the prophetic words were like, okay, get ready for rough waters and this and that. And it was very specific, like, okay, someone we had hired to run a new company we started. The word was, this guy's going to be trouble. So why did we hang on to him? That's a good question. And he ended up really hurting us bad.
Oh my goodness.
And there was a bunch of other stuff. So there,
Well, hang
we're
on one
still
quick
hanging.
second. Hang on one second there,
Yeah,
Devin.
yeah.
Okay, so a lot of times what we're equipped to do in as we're learning to hear the voice of God and and I even do it in my I have an e-course on our website on prophetic equipping, and I actually deal with this issue. Is a lot of times we're taught to not give negative or words that are difficult to hear. If you want to hear the word, then if you would enjoy receiving it, then please give it. But the idea of having these warning words where you're being warned by the Lord of difficulties, sometimes that is not suggested as prophetic etiquette. And so you started receiving some of these lookout words of things that were coming down. How did you process? Because wait a minute, we're supposed to be giving positive, uplifting prophetic words. So how did you process kind of a warning word coming to you?
Well, that's a really good point. Because I agree with that. You should, if you hear a word someone says you're going to die in next week, that's not from the Lord. But I got to really clarify the words we got from you guys was, first of all, they're from the Lord, not from you guys. And the Lord was saying, get ready, this and this and that's coming. And we kind of already sensed it, but this was a confirmation, what we already sensed. But it wasn't like a warning, like you better stop doing this or you better change your ways. It wasn't that kind of a warning. It was more of, you know, this is the course you're on and be ready for it because you got some storms coming. So batten down the hatches and but you're going to make it. So it was everything about the word was in the end, or the actual word was very encouraging. So I
And
have
they
to
were
say
confirmation, and they felt like
they
they
were
were confirming.
they're confirming what we suspected what was happening. And then once that was more settled, it was also telling us, hang on, God's going to work a way through this, and you're gonna come out on top. So we always just kind of hung on and had faith. And then there was a lot of other words that came because you guys were giving us words like, I don't know, every 2 weeks or something. So it's kind of like our daily bread. And it was like, the Lord saying, seek me, seek my word, seek this, seek that. So that was what was keeping us sustaining. And it wasn't all bad stuff happening. But overall, when you look back since, let's say June of 2022 to where we are now, which is basically 2 years, it was an overall a downward spiral. And it wasn't because of I mean, we made a few mistakes, rookie mistakes, starting okay, so we're a freight forwarder, NVOCC, whatever. So we started our own trucking company. So it's the first time we did logistics where we're asset owned. We bought a bunch of trucks, chassis, hired a bunch of drivers, did all the regulation stuff with California and LA and the ports, and just a huge rigmarole and just like a huge hassle. But we thought, okay, this is a great supplement to our existing business. So it was kind of a new thing, even though we're very familiar with it. So that said, we made a lot of rookie mistakes. We hired the wrong people. We paid too high because we waited. The market was really expensive, so we overpaid for all that kind of stuff. So looking back, man, if I just would have waited, 4 or 5 months, I wouldn't have lost so much money, or not hired this guy. And then the lady that replaced him, she ended up being just as bad. So a lot of that stuff. But so we learned a lot. But in the end, God was saying, don't worry, you're going to learn. I'm going to bless you. Hang in there and blah, blah, blah. But that part of the word, I got to be honest, even though God is still with us and we're hanging in there, it hasn't really come yet. So it goes back to the previous trial period for 5 years. It feels like that. Feels like, because I remember the Lord saying, the light's at the end of the tunnel, you're going to make it. Because our business was doing really bad before this great time between 2020 and 2022. So I feel like we're going back to that area. And it's the whole industry I'm in. If you're familiar with trade, there's a lot of tariffs with China. So a lot of people are not, they're not shipping as much. And then the tariffs that are coming, people are shipping a lot. So it's the worst of both worlds, because a lot of my customers are not shipping. The ones that are, the rates are so high that we can't make any money. Our cost is, really high. So it's like we're getting squeezed from every end. And so it's my industry. A lot of my competitors are going out of business, especially the trucking companies, because the fuel's high. It's very expensive to do business in California, and the market's horrible, so no one's making money. So that's why we're shutting down this trucking company after 2 years going at it, because we realize it's just not sustainable. Maybe in a year or two it might pick back up, but we can't continue to lose money every month. But the Lord's saying, even during this time, don't worry, all things work to the good to those who love God according to his purpose. What the moths and locusts have devoured, I'm going to restore. So we have a lot of hope. We have a lot of promise. And we know from experience that this has happened before. So right now, we're just kind of navigating through the hard times. And got to be honest, in the last couple of weeks, I've seen some good signs. Things are starting to slowly pick up. So I'm an optimist. I feel like maybe the next time, Scott, you call me on your checkup, I'm going to have a lot of more good reports. But it's been a dismal 2 years, I tell you. It's been tough. And so definitely we're staying with the Lord. We're thanking him. And there's other parts of our lives, our ministry that we have is the opposite. It's been blessed. It's growing, blah, blah, blah. But when you're a business person, that weighs on you. So even though other things are doing good, my good things are happening with my son, just a lot of other good stuff's happening. But the business part of it is just a big, heavy cloud's been sitting on us for 2 years.
Yeah.
So I feel like I've heard a sermon once, and it was a great teaching, and the main part of it was, there's only 3 seasons in your life. One is that you're in a trial, 2, you're coming out of a trial, or 3, you're about to go into a trial. So we live in spiritual. If we're kind of like Trump. Once we decided to do business God's way, we have a target on our back from the enemy, and so we're always under either just coming out of an attack, or in an attack, or about to go into an attack. But throughout that, we always seem to come out on top. And that's the great thing about being on the mountain of economy and trusting in the Lord, is he's so faithful. And he's never early, he's never late, he's always on time, and we all know this. But man, when you live that and you experience that all the time, even in the darkest of times, you're not going to let go of that promise, because God's faithful. He comes through every time. And then when we connect with people like you guys, who constantly encourage us, and the latest word, we talked last week, and then we decided to do this call, and I had a lot of, what was me stuff to tell you. But then we got a word from you guys, which always comes from Michelle, but you remind me it comes from you. So now when I read the word, I'm thinking, okay, this is from Scott too. So
good. I give credit where credit is due. We're a team. We have a team.
I think it came on Friday, and I had spent some time with the Lord that day, and he gave me this great picture that, you don't have to, I'm just trying to summarize. You don't have to work to strive to fix these problems. Just receive my solutions. Are coming like a wave. And if you remember your word, it was like, be positioned like a surfer is for the wave that's coming. And it was like, wow, God, you're so cool you just told me this, and then an hour or two later, I get this word from you guys. It says basically the same thing. So that was really encouraging. And that's the Lord. That's what he does, right? So,
Yeah, that's right.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, tell me just I love that. Thank you for that. And I love the promoting what we do is really a lot of fun. We love, I mean, if I could figure out how to do it, and it's exciting that we get to pay, we get paid to play in the ways of the spirit, and it gives us so much joy and pleasure. And when your feedback email came through, Michelle's like, Scott, guess what? Guess what? The word we gave to Devin and Shirley, it was the catching the new wave thing. I was like, oh, that's so
Yeah.
great. So that was really encouraging. We love it when we are able to give you prophetic confirmations and encourage. That's just really encouraging. So I
Yeah.
love that so much. It's really a lot of fun. But I
Yeah.
think the thing that most people, I mean, we have the proverb, hope deferred makes the heart sick, longing fulfilled is the tree of life. We have these disappointments and hits come, and it's good when they're, even 50-50 is good. We take a hit and we get a success. But when these hits keep hitting us for longer periods of time, man, it is hard to stay in a place of hope and vision for the future. So
Yeah.
what are some things that you've learned about sustaining long periods of time where it doesn't feel like it's working right? What was your conversation with, how are you posturing your heart? How are you carrying your heart before the Lord? And I know that it is up and down. You don't do it well every time, but tell us some things that you've learned about sustaining the storm long term.
Um, Man, that could be a really long answer, or it could be just a uh, kind of a uh, I don't want to make it a cliche answer, but because
No, real.
we,
Be
we,
real.
we as we as mature Christians know the answer to that question, right?
Oh yeah.
But seek ye first the kingdom of God, all these things will be added to you. So, but I gotta say, being as real as I can, is that yeah, there has been times where it just gets like, I don't want to say overwhelming, because God doesn't give us too much that we can't handle, but it feels like if you ever ran like a marathon, it's like mile 18, your feet hurt, your legs hurt, you got another 6 miles or whatever, 8 miles, and you're like, it's hot, and you're just like, oh, just like, I don't know if I can do more of this. Is this really worth it? So you get those kind of waves of negative or fear or whatever. But I got to say, what happens in the way the Lord works with me, and I'm sure just about anybody, is during that time, if really the secret to that is you got to, when you're going through times that are really seem dismal, and it's like you're not seeing the light in the tunnel, you're not seeing what God said, the promise is coming, you're seeing the opposite, and then you question, like, am I really hearing the Lord? And then you go through that. But really, the secret to it all, and the obvious solution, is you just got to dig in deeper with the Lord, because the more you seek Him, He's gonna respond to you. Those that seek after me, I will no wise cast away. So the more you, and so I've been a Christian for 45 years, so I have so much history with the Lord. Like, there's never a doubt in my mind that if I dig in deeper with Him, He's not going to give me the answer I'm looking for. So I'll just kind of replay a few of the conversations I had, say, going back 6 months or a year. Really 6 months, because it's been, well, the darkest before the dawn. That's what I feel. The dawn's coming. It's been pretty dismal, especially when you have to shut down your company and take all these losses. That's like putting your tail between your legs, right? That's not fun, because I
Mm-mm.
love success. I hate failure. But then again, I look back in my business career of 40 something years. Um, I have failed 10 times more than I've succeeded. I really have. I've had a lot of failure. But my successes have been home runs, and they've way overshadowed the many failures. And that's just God's mercy, because my failures never really, set me back that I can't recover. But my successes always propel me way past, where I thought I'd be, so I can handle future failures. And I'm a risk taker. My wife's not. So part of our struggle is she's like saying, I don't know about this. And I'm like, no, I really feel like God's going to bless this, and that was this business. And she kept saying from the beginning, I don't feel right about this. A word to the wise: the Lord speaks through our wives probably most of the time. So I am guilty of not hearing from the Lord through my wife, because a lot of times I hear the Lord through my optimist self voice. And I have to say that I've learned throughout the years that I got to really be careful of that, because that can be very deceiving when I'm hearing from the Lord what I want to hear. But so going back to
I
what
think
I
the
was saying,
the further
yeah,
I get in the Lord and the deeper I get into intimacy and friendship with God, the more and more that the voice of the Lord really sounds mysteriously similar to my wife's voice.
yeah, a good friend of mine once told me, you have to listen to the sexy voice of God. So but yeah, but through that time, the Lord had been the conversation I had, despite my inability to hear from him sometimes, the Lord always reconfirms things to me and says, don't worry, you're hearing from me. You missed it a few times in this area and your wife was right, but overall I'm hearing from the Lord. So, but what he tells me is like, don't you know that I'm making you a stronger person? I'm chiseling away stuff that needs to get chiseled away,
Mhm,
so that the sculpture I'm creating you is going to be perfect.
mhm,
And then I go, yeah, that's right. Oh, yeah, when you chisel stuff off, it hurts. So I'm like, the Lord, he just brings me to reality, the what he sees instead of what
mhm,
I see. And he goes, you don't, the Lord kept telling me, you don't see what I see. Like, I don't live in the same time spectrum as you. I see where you're going. I see what all this is going to produce, and it's glorious. And I'm like, oh yeah, thank you. And so then Lord gives me a new dose of like, woohoo! I got a new vision. I can see what he sees. And then that lasts for about a week or two until the next big thing happens. And I go crying back to the Lord. And then he goes, did I not tell you this 2 weeks ago? You're like, come on, grow up. So God's always toughening me up and telling me, this is what he sees. And, you know, don't you know what faith is? It's seeing and believing without seeing and touching. So I'm like, oh yeah, faith. Yeah, oh yeah, that's the big part of this whole thing. So I have to thank God, because he's actually putting me through something that's growing me. And then I look at it from a different perspective. And then I look at what I'm going through that's not cool as, oh yeah, this is just temporary. So once he adjusts your perspective, you're back on track, right? So that's been the journey, just
mhm,
just those, falling down and getting back up kind of stuff. But each time I get back up, I feel my faith is a little stronger. I feel like
mhm,
I'm more mature, and I know that even though I guess you're not supposed to do this, but being a businessman, I love working for rewards, and I know my rewards are getting bigger. So that's always a good incentive too, right? When like all this crap that I'm putting up with from the Lord, from the
mhm,
enemy,
mhm.
is like, that's earning me even more rewards. I'm like, that's going to be so cool, because I like rewards. I like profit. I like success, right? So the Lord, he knows that's what I like. So he keeps giving me those promises like, don't you want a
Yeah.
bigger reward? I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, we can do this, Lord. And then guess what? It's only a matter of time before the Lord comes through and says, didn't I tell you? And here it is. Boom. So, yeah, that's the way the Lord
Mhm,
works. He did it before and he's going to do it again. So I'm still coming out of that valley. So I'm still scarred up and bruised. So I
mhm,
can't sit here and go, yep, I made it. Um, there's still some doubts in there, and we're still putting up with a lot of crap from our company. We're shutting down. We're dealing with nobody wants to buy our trucks because it's a bad market. We're dealing with the yard that we have another year on our lease. It's going to cost us a lot of money, and the market's so bad. I'm having a hard time finding a tenant to replace me, and even when I do, it's going to be at a loss because I signed at a much higher price during the peak of the market. So we're dealing with all that kind of stuff. So, but what I said. It's
Yeah.
just, we're going to make it.
Yeah.
We're going to make it.
He always works everything for good. Well, I'm
Yep.
excited. I'm excited for that. If you could start this trial all over, what would, and you had a really good friend that was about ready to go through something that you just journeyed down, and you're still in it. I mean, we're not trying to say that you're, out of it. You just said that yourself. But what would be one or two things that you would advise, somebody's starting to get kind of tip offs that rough stuff is coming, and the kind of prophetic tip offs that you begin to get from us at the beginning of this thing? What would you tell your friend how to and they're like, man, this seems like this is off, things are going good, and my company is expanding, and I really don't see rough waters in my sights here. And so how would you advise a friend that was on the beginning, maybe a year and a half or 2 years ago? What would you tell them to do?
That's a good question. I'm reminded of the old adage, buy low, sell high. So if things are going really good, think about cashing in on your success, because rough times are going to come. So that's always a good thing that I need to keep reminding of myself. Just like, if you own stocks, and it's always a cycle, and stocks go up. You're, oh yeah, I'm making good money. Oh, I'm going to buy more stocks. No, you need to sell your stocks. When stocks are really low, that's when you buy, not sell. So that, and the other is when things are going really good and you feel like me, I'm a risk taker, and the history of my risk taking, I've always come out ahead, and that's really what balances our partnership. My wife and I. She's not a risk taker. She's very conservative, and almost to the point of she operates in fear. So my boldness and courage and faith kind of balances hers. So we need both sides. But when things are going really good, that's the time to listen to your conservative other half, your wife, or if you're a woman, leading the business and you're a risk taker and your husband's conservative, obviously listen to your husband. But usually the man should listen to the wife. That's my experience. But I think those are the two things I would tell myself right now if I was in that situation of this hypothetical person, because those are the two biggest lessons I've learned. Is like, I need to remember, you got to sell when it's high, and you need to start thinking in terms of being conservative, and when things are going really good, don't just go, oh yeah, because that's what I did. We started a new business, and I was spending money because I could afford it, and I was not really thinking conservatively like I should have. And if I would have been smart, I would have saved myself a lot of money just operating in that mindset. But I didn't. I was thinking, oh, the good times are never going to end, and God's going to keep blessing everything I did. So those are the two biggest things I would advise to this person that
you're
saying
and
hypothetically.
Yeah. What is there any ungodly belief systems that you picked up along the way that the Lord is like corrected you on, or is there ways of I know that whatever a man thinks, so is he, and we have all of the scriptures of commending us to be renewed in the spirit of mind, take captive every thought. Was there a thought process or mental habits that the Lord kind of corrected you or taught you on along the way?
And I got to hand it to you. You're a good interviewer. You come up with some profound questions. Yeah,
Thank you.
that's a really really good thing, because that's something that I should have learned long ago, but I believe I've learned that lesson too, is that um, as a Christian business person, and knowing that I have a calling to the mountain of economy, you feel like you're a warrior and God's using you to fund the kingdom of God. So that's a really good feeling, because I know that throughout the years we've funded a lot of ministries consistently, and we've never stopped. I mean, we've been tithing and giving offerings. By the way, this is on the side. Something I've learned that God's really blessed is that you tithe, which is 10%. That belongs to the Lord. It's not even your money, even though that's kind of an Old Testament thing. People forget. Jesus said these things you ought to do, but he also said, but now think in terms of it's all belongs to the Lord. So that's what he said to, I believe, the Pharisees when they questioned him on it. But so I've learned throughout the years of being a Christian business person that you tithe, but then you also give 10% an offering, because it says in Malachi 3:10, you have robbed me with tithes and offerings. So tithes is God's money. Offerings is where you get that scripture applied. Give and it shall be given unto you. Good measure shall men give unto your bosom. If you're tithing, you're not giving. You have to give. So that said, God has always blessed and honored our um, our finances through thick and thin, because we're faithful to tithe and give offerings,
Mm-hmm.
and we tithe on the gross. That's another lie that goes out there I've heard from different Christians. Well, you should tithe after you get taxed and blah blah blah. No, you tithe on the gross. And just another little side rabbit trail testimony is we tithed on the gross of the amazing earnings we had in 2021 and 2022, and we paid a crap load of taxes. Well, because we did it faithfully without thinking, oh no, this hurts to cut these big checks for not only taxes, but also for tithing and offering. Well, guess what? In the last 2 years, we've gotten a lot of refunds that we never saw coming, which has helped us sustain this business that was failing, because we would spend like well, this happened 6 months ago. We had to drop another 100 grand into our account, because we couldn't make payroll and all these bills came up, and it was like, oh, this hurts. And then we find out from the IRS that we overpaid, and they're sending us $100,000 refund. So it's like, oh, that's how it works. So I, my I want to say that as a Christian business person, it feels really good to fund the kingdom of God and give tithes and offerings, and that feels great. But to answer your question, there's a pride that comes with that that's not good, and I've got caught up in that pride. The enemy is so slippery and sneaky, because I don't see it. It's there. I should know it by now, because when you have sin, you should know it, right? And I just feel a little bit of grieving of the Holy Spirit. And I'm like, I can't put my finger on, but why is the Holy Spirit grieved? Things are going great. I'm doing all these great things. And then after a few little bumps and bruises and, some stuff happens, you go, oh, yeah, God's dealing with my pride again,
Wow.
because it's easy to get caught up in that pride. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember when I gave my testimony at that event, that I felt like, okay, hopefully I'm encouraging people. I'm not up here to toot my own horn, but I had an honest to goodness great story of going through hard times, and then God came through and there was great success. So I felt good saying that, because I'm glorifying the Lord. But
Yeah.
afterwards I realized I had some pride there,
Mm.
and it was like, oh, look at me. People are envious of me. um, and I look in the mirror and I go, dang, you're a good looking guy. But that's not healthy,
Yeah.
because it's not about what you see with your eyes. It's what's really going on in your heart. So the Lord has dealt with me again, and he's done it before, and I feel ashamed that he has to deal with it again, but it keeps creeping back, that sin of pride. And
Mm-hmm.
so I've been humbled.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't feel like the same guy 2 years ago giving that testimony. Like, I've learned, do not boast on stuff, you know, even
Mm-hmm.
if I'm not saying it with my mouth, it was in my heart.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a real big dangerous thing. And
Mm-hmm.
and I feel ashamed that I don't have the same success that I did 2 years ago, because I do have people in my hub from the Rise group
Yeah.
that I kind of, some people, not all of them, but some of them I kind of mentor and I give them advice. And then there's people in my ministry that I disciple and I give them advice, because I say, hey, I got the fruit on the tree. Listen to me. But you know, I have to say that I've been humbled to the point where I'm not gonna have that same attitude with people that I did 2 years ago. Like, oh, listen to me, I've already made it, I've had success,
Mm-hmm.
so don't even doubt what I'm saying. But I have much more to say now through my failures and
Mm-hmm.
my mistakes, and even by admitting that I've had pride. I feel like that alone is a good testimony to others, because I've seen it in other business people too, where I see them up on the stage, Christian people. I've gone to a lot of Christian events
Mm-hmm.
for the last 30, 40 years and heard a lot of, great speakers and successful people, authors, business people. And I really look up to them. And I was like envious of them. Like, I want to be that guy. And it's not healthy. That's
Mm-hmm.
not what the Lord wants. So, and then I'm reminded that people, that whole thing where Dale Carnegie said, people are not interested in what you have to say. They're interested in what you, I'm misquoting it. You know
People
that quote?
people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yeah, there you go. That's it. I
Yeah.
got to remember that quote. I know that quote, but I keep forgetting it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like you got to be real, and people don't really want to hear so much of your success stories. They want to hear your failures, because most
Mm-hmm.
people are dealing with stuff like that at
Yep.
some level,
Yep.
no matter how Christian business person you are.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a real Christian business person called to the mountain economy, you got a target on your back and you're going through some stuff, especially
Yeah.
when the economy's not good,
Yeah.
and you need encouragement. And
Yeah.
that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, these last couple of moments, this has just been really rich, and we're about to the end of our time together. But just take a couple of moments and just use your, excuse me, your sanctified imagination and imagine that I'm in the middle of a 2-year season of failure after failure. So just take a couple of minutes and just encourage me into prophetic hope.
Okay. Well, some of this I've already kind of, uh, said through what I've felt the Lord show me in the last couple of, years, but mainly in the last 6 months, been the hardest times.
Mm-hmm.
Is just like I said, getting with the Lord, going to that secret hiding place, spending
Mm-hmm.
time with Him, hearing from Him, as if you're Moses on the mountain, or you're Elijah next to the stream, and getting that really close, intimate time with the
Mm-hmm.
Lord, where beyond a shadow of a doubt, 100%, you're hearing from the Lord. There's no question. And when you're hearing from the Father, because it's the Father. It's like always encouraging and loving. And the Lord is so loving and so caring and is so concerned about everything that concerns us.
Mm-hmm.
I can't even explain it. It goes beyond comprehension how much the Lord cares about what we care about. And so when you really lay everything before the Lord and you wait upon Him, because a lot of times He makes you wait. He's really good at making you wait, especially people like me that are very anxious and have no patience. But I gotta say, the best encouragement I can give you is that when you spend time with the Lord, there's 100% guarantee you're gonna walk away refreshed and encouraged and given a vision of what He sees coming, because the Lord does not live in our time frame. He lives in the time of now, and he sees where you're going and what's coming, just like he sees now or the past. And once we get in that perspective of kingdom thought, like, you see the enemy's lies very clearly. And once you kick out the enemy, he flees. And nothing but encouragement and promise and hope comes from that, because that's the Lord. That's the God we serve. And then, of course, there's a million scriptures that we can look at, right? There's so many scriptures. The ones that come to my head are the ones that I've memorized a long time ago, of all things work to the good, Romans 8, I think 28 or something. And then he restores what the locusts have devoured. What the enemy shall come before you one way, and he'll flee in 7 ways. And Isaiah 61, he'll restore double blessing of the trouble that you've had. You just go on and on. Our God is a faithful God, and he has a mission and a goal, not a goal, a mission and an assignment. That's the word, an assignment for us, and he's equipped us, and we're not going to fail. There's just failure is not an option. Yeah, we'll fall down and we'll make some mistakes, and some of it, or maybe most of it, because of our own mistakes. But he's the Father. He picks you back up and he goes, okay, let's try this again. He never gives up on us, and he will, I guess the best scripture is, he that began a good work in us will be faithful and complete it on that day. So that's our life. Like, when it's all said and done, you and I are flying around with our wings about 1,000,000 years from now. We're going to look back at this and go, yeah, that's what it was all about. God began something on us and he completed it, period, in the story. So we're in that journey now. And, never back down from an opportunity to increase your faith, because that's what really counts. That's the currency of heaven. And so if you want more currency, get more faith. So that would be my my best advice to someone, like you said, in that situation. That is, it sounds like I'm giving that advice to myself, because I'm going through that.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate your time. It is just so valuable to me. And I know that many people who will listen to this will be greatly encouraged. And I love your advice. Dig deep. When things are difficult, I just think of the idea I heard someone say that, well, there's 2 things I want to mention right here. Is number one is, the eagle, when storms come, the eagle sets his wings against the resistance of the wind, and it carries him above the storm. And I love that idea. The other thing that I just heard recently is, I've been studying, the Lord's been speaking to our family around buffaloes. I have my buffalo hat on today. And cows, regular beef cattle, they will run away from a storm. They'll see a storm coming and they'll run for shelter, and they'll run away from a storm. But a buffalo has an internal compass inside of them, where they see a storm coming and they will actually run into the storm. And when they run into the storm, they actually weather the storm much faster, because the cattle will run away from it and they get the brunt of the storm, and they're running the same direction of the storm. So it overtakes them and they endure the storm for longer. Whereas a buffalo runs through the storm, he'll actually run directly through the storm, and he'll experience less of the storm because he's running through the storm.
Oh, that's good.
I just think there's this space that the Lord's inviting us into, is this place of, will you develop an intimate friendship with me that weathers the storm? Will you come? Like, I've heard so many people, it's safer to walk out on the waves and the wind with the Lord than it is to weather the storm in the boat full of fear and anxious pointing of fingers. And so
that's rich.
I just really love that. I just really love that.
That's very, very deep, very profound. That's
Yeah.
a good nugget to hold on to. Yeah. I like that. I didn't know that about buffaloes. I always remembered the eagle, but yeah, wow, buffaloes too.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's pretty interesting to me. I think of, and this is my last thought, and then I'll let you all go. Thanks for joining this conversation with us. But let me leave you with this one thought. The Lord is trying to get us to this space where we follow the same journey as Simon Peter. Peter, as being developed as a leader of the early church in his disciple days of following the Lord, he wakes the Lord up in the middle of the storm, and he says, Lord, don't you even care that we're going to die in this storm? And there's this accusation to the Lord. Things are not working right. It's not easy. The sun isn't 70 degrees with a light headwind. It's not a beautiful time of ease and everything working right. And we tend to, like Peter, sometimes point the finger at the Lord and say, don't you even care that I'm suffering here? Well, fast forward just a few short years later, Peter is actually thrown in jail, and he's dreaming so deeply that he goes into REM sleep and assumes that he's having a dream. And so his he's about to be martyred. Like the very next day, they're going to martyr Peter, and he's sleeping with 16 guards chained to him, and he's sleeping so soundly that when the angel wakes him up, he thinks he's having a dream. So how does Peter go from, do you even care that we're going to die in the boat, to sleeping so soundly that he assumes he's dreaming when the angel wakes him up? Such a contrast of
Uh,
maturity. One is full of anxious accusation, and the next one is so in the place of rest that we
yeah.
forget where we are. And so I think that's the
Right.
journey that the Lord is really inviting us to, is will you experience that interior rest, that when things are falling apart, going to hell in a handbasket, will you go to sleep and trust that I'm working out all things together for the good?
Yeah, that's another. I never knew that analogy. That's a great one. I love it.
Yep.
You're
Well,
full of nuggets today.
well, I do appreciate your time, Devin, and learning from your journey. And so I just want to say thank you. I really appreciate you explaining some of your heart posture and being able to glean from your journey. So thank you for your time.
You got it, buddy.
All right. Well, Vince, thank you very much for following along in this conversation. And like I said at the beginning, this is a conversation. I want to hear how you've experienced our conversation today and what the Lord is speaking to you. And so thank you again. Until the next time in the next episode of the Prayer Focus, be blessed, and I will see you next time.